All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome. Thanks for tuning in today. Happy Friday. My name is Michelle. I'm the Assistant Coordinator of the Second Year Experience Program, and you've tuned into the Healthy Relationships Effective Communication presentation. So thanks for tuning in. Let me share my screen with you all so you can see the presentation. So today we're going to be talking about healthy relationships and how to communicate effectively with those we have relationships with, not just romantic, but also familial and friendships, all kinds of relationships. So if you could do us a favor and sign in, the sign-in link is here, pasted, but I'll also put it in the section below for you all to click the link directly. But yeah, so let's get started. Let's see. All right, so why is healthy and effective communication important? So I strongly believe that we're social beings. Being connected with others is a human need, and it's a normal part of life. So even now with the coronavirus pandemic that we're experiencing and social distancing, it means that either we're connecting with people differently, whether that means virtually, or we're with the people we live with the most we've ever been in our lives. So we're like interacting with people more than we have ever been before, or getting to know people that we live with, or our family, or our roommates more than we have ever before. So I think effective communication is a way to build that connection with the folks that we surround ourselves with. And I think effective communication allows for us to tell those people what we need, and for those people to tell us what they need from us, right? And I think that's just part of any relationship, and part of any healthy relationship is just communicating what we need from each other and to feel supported and to feel loved. But as you probably know, communicating effectively can be really tough sometimes. And that's because miscommunication happens often. So maybe we didn't get to say what we wanted. We didn't know how to say what we needed to, or we lacked the words. Like in the moment, we really didn't know how to find the words to say what we needed to say. Or sometimes maybe we just have a hard time processing what is happening and how to respond. Sometimes that can happen when we feel triggered. So having a really strong emotional reaction to what is being said. Or maybe we're not talking about the same thing. So maybe I'm talking about just helping out every now and then, and maybe you're just talking about the one time that you didn't wash dishes, right? So sometimes we're not necessarily talking about the same thing. And other times we're just not really truly listening to each other. So I'm not really listening to what you're saying, and therefore I'm not responding in the way that maybe is leading to a fruitful conversation. Or maybe I don't feel like I'm being heard, like what I'm saying is being valued, or is being taken seriously, right? So miscommunication can happen often and a lot, because for a lot of reasons, not just this. So that's kind of what I want to talk about today. So unfortunately, because this is a YouTube presentation, we can't pair and share, but I do want you to think about, just reflect to yourself or write somewhere in your journal or in your notes, what are some major, or if you could think to yourself and reflect to yourself about a time where you had a miscommunication with someone. So what happened? What do you think led to that miscommunication, and how did you feel about it? So just take some time to think about that one experience that you may have had with someone. Um, and now I want you to think about a different experience. So reflect on a time where you told someone what you needed and they were really able to hear you out and support you. So my best guess is those two scenarios are pretty different, and they might even be with the same person. So if you could think about, what are the major differences between both of those experiences? My best guess is that, in one you didn't feel heard, maybe you felt disrespected, or there were assumptions that were being made either by you or by the other person or persons. And maybe in the second scenario, you felt like the other person really cared about you, really listened to you. You felt like you we're both putting, or both parties or multiple parties were making an equal effort to make things right, or to have a fruitful conversation, right? So there's a lot of ways that these conversations can happen. And I think one of the major reasons that we can have effective communication or not good communication is because we just communicate differently. So part of that is because we see the world from a different lens, and we think differently, and we think about our needs or the other person's needs differently. And I think that sometimes either can really help us communicate effectively, or it can really get in the way and help us not really see eye to eye. So we have oversimplified or simplified it here. So we're going to talk about 4 different communication styles: the analyzer, the director, the socializer, and the relator. Uh, so obviously you can be a combination of all of these, but maybe for today, just think about today, who do I feel most like? The analyzer, the director, the socializer, or the relator? So just to go over them quickly, the analyzer likes facts and logic, is very organized, prefers control, likes instructions. The director is someone who is results oriented, goals oriented, is competitive, takes charge, and makes decisions, firm decisions. The socializer is kind of like our social butterfly, the person who is really motivated, likes to build relationships with people, works really well in teams, and can be a good listener. And the relator is someone who enjoys change and creativity, is really friendly and optimistic, and is really adaptable. So just take some time to think about which one of these are you today, or which one of these are you most of the time? Which of these characteristics fit you? And so just to dive deep into these a little bit more. So the director really likes to get things done. They like control. They're really comfortable being leaders. They're fast-paced and goal-oriented. So they're the kind of people that just want to get stuff done, and are very focused on success. And they're just innate leaders. They're the first ones to lead the group in maybe group projects, or the first one to volunteer. And sometimes these folks can come off as insensitive or impatient because they're just ready to get things done, or they're very much goal-oriented, that they don't really tend to lend to people's feelings or what's going on with them emotionally. So on the other hand, we have with the socializer. So this person is our social butterfly. They're really fun to be around. They make others laugh. They like to be in groups to get their energy from other people. Really charismatic and enthusiastic. Sometimes can be impulsive, really risk takers, optimistic, very much trust their intuition, and sometimes have short attention spans because they just want to be on the go, interacting with people, being with people, right? And then we have the analyzer, who for me is kind of seems on the opposite spectrum of the socializer. So this person is a thinker, they're a problem solver, they're very methodical, meaning they like to have very clear instructions and step-by-step things about all parts of their life. Very detail-oriented, slow to make decisions because they like to deliberate and weigh out all of their options before making a decision. They have very high expectations of themselves, and therefore they have high expectations of others. They're very logical, so if A equals B and B equals C, then A equals C, and that's it. There's no other way around that. Sometimes they can come off as critical or pessimistic, almost negative, but really that's kind of their logic coming in. And they're very much perfectionists, so they like things to be done really well. And that kind of ties into the high expectations of themselves and others. And the relator, so this is me usually, this person is person-oriented, they're really nurturing, very warm. They really value their relationships in their life, whether that means their friendships or their family, or their partner or partners. They're team players. They love to help others and be in groups with others. They're very loyal and avoid conflict or confrontation. That's not something that most relators deal with very well. And they really value reliability, balance, and sincerity. So they like those characteristics are in themselves, and they like those characteristics in the other people they choose to be in relationship with. So I want you to think about now is if you've chosen a communication style, so a relator, a socializer, an analyzer, or a director, what made you choose that communication style? So take some time to reflect on that. What about you drew you to that communication style, or what made you think like, oh yeah, I know that's me for sure? And what are some characteristics that you feel like you share with that communication style? And what I also want you to think about is, so knowing what you know now about your communication style, what are ways that you like other people to show that they support you, that they care about you? What about those, what do you feel like helps you feel valued in relationships? So just take some time to reflect on these questions, keeping in mind the communication style that you chose. All right. So feel free to just jot some notes and pause the video if you need to, or you can always come back to this. So we're going to keep moving on. So for directors, here are some ideas. This might not be one size fits all, but these are generally what, as the directors, for example, like to be communicated or how they like to be communicated with. So if you're a director, hopefully this resonates. But directors usually like people to be really clear, really fast, and really precise. They like folks to be really well prepared with solutions. They don't want like the small talk. They want to get to the point about what the issue is or what the solutions are. They don't like too much detail, feels overwhelming, and they like for you to learn about their goals and how you can help them get there. And they like, really concrete examples or really concrete data because they want to be able to remember that and see how it ties into the solution or maybe the challenge, right? So hopefully if you're a director, hopefully some of this resonates. And for our socializers, how do our socializers like to be communicated with? So socializers really like for you to take some time to build a relationship with them. They like to be in fun environments with new elements or new challenges. They like to, or they like for you to help them with prioritizing. So maybe sometimes socializers don't really know what's the most important to do first. And they like to, most of the time, skip the unnecessary or the boring details. They just want to get to the fun part or like the most essential part. And they like to be clear on who is doing what and by when. So they're clear about the expectations that they have for themselves and the expectations for you. And they really are motivated by praise, with praise. So if you tell them like you're doing a great job or I really appreciate you doing this, they really enjoy that, and that really helps them feel more motivated. And be really careful about giving them feedback. You want to be conscious about the way they like to receive feedback, especially feedback that is more constructive or critical. For our analyzers, most analyzers don't really like excessive small talk or social interaction. They want all their experiences and their conversations to be meaningful. They like for conversations to go slower, to give time for processing. So most of our analyzers take in a lot of information and need separate time to kind of process that and analyze that and make meaning out of that. They might have a lot of questions for you. So be prepared to answer those questions with more information or examples. And they usually like to write things down because they like things to refer back to. So most of our analyzers like to take some time afterwards to kind of process, and writing things down or keeping notes of things really helps them. And analyzers really like folks who keep their promises or keep to their responsibilities. It helps them show that you're loyal to them or you take your word seriously, because they take their word seriously and they have very high expectations of themselves too. And lastly, our relators. So our relators really appreciate when you're patient with them, when you show sincere interest in them as a person. So before you go asking for favors or asking for help on something, they like for you to, they like to know that you really care about them genuinely as a person. And most of the time, sometimes relators can be very fearful or anxious. So, especially around change. So, if you explain a lot of things, give more context about what's going on, it helps reduce some of that anxiety or some of that fear. Relators really appreciate when you follow through with your promises. So, similar to analyzers, it shows your loyalty and sincerity and your commitment to them and your relationship with them. And they really appreciate folks who are really warm, inviting, and focus on feelings. So relators are very they're very in touch with their feelings and their emotions. So if you focus on that, it helps you connect with the relators a little bit better. And also, relators don't really like to be pushed into a corner. I don't think anyone does, but I think relators, especially, don't do well with ultimatums. They like to make decisions for themselves, and to feel like both parties have an equal part in the decision making in that relationship. So what I think this shows, hopefully, is that there's a broad range of the way we can communicate with the people that are in our lives. And not everyone is going to have the same communication style as us. So as you can see, we like to be communicated with in a really different way. And in a very specific ways that help us understand the other person and also understand ourselves. So maybe I'm a relator, but maybe my best friend is an analyzer. So I can't really approach them in the same way that I like to be approached, because that might not be effective for them. Um, so I think it's important to have these conversations, even about what kind of communication style you are or what you notice in the other person. So that way you can come to terms with how to communicate, especially when there's conflict. Or, yeah, I hope that makes sense. So I do want to take some time to think about or to talk about conflict, because I think most of the time when we have effective communication, all is well, things are working out really well. But conflict does happen, and it's a normal and healthy part of any relationship. And I think at the same time, it brings up a lot of fear. I know it does for me. Given that I'm a relator, I don't do well with conflict or confrontation. It makes me nervous, and it makes me feel like something bad's gonna happen. This relationship isn't going to work out. I'm not going to be friends with this person, or this fight's going to really affect me and my family for a long time. But conflict is a natural part of any relationship, and I think it doesn't have to be as scary as I think maybe we've seen in the past, um, from examples from other folks or experiences that we've had in the past. I think there's a way to have really constructive conflict. And I think it's all about how you communicate through that conflict while being true to yourself. So saying what you need to say and honoring what you need, while also respecting the other person. So kind of touching back to what I said previously, having conversations even before you get to the conflict about how do you like to receive feedback. So how do I like to receive feedback? So I know for me personally, that means I like feedback to be given usually in a one-on-one space. I don't really like people, especially if it's critical feedback. I don't like to be in front of others. And I like folks to be really gentle with me, but also be very direct with me, about what's going on, especially because if I don't know, then I'm going to feel blindsided. So I like to ease up into it a little bit, but also have a direct conversation about what's really happening. And I like usually for there to also be some sort of resolution or some space for us to talk about, like, okay, so where do we go from here? Um, yeah, so that's kind of like for me personally. And I think it's also important for me to think about, like, okay, so how do I like people to approach me when there's conflict or something's not going well in our relationship? And also for the other person to tell me, like, hey, this is the way I like to be approached, or like, this is the way I would like for you to tell me, like, if something's up or if something's not working out between us. And I think also setting some boundaries or guidelines for when there is conflict. So maybe for me, like, I can only handle so much because I'm very sensitive and very in tune with my feelings. So if my emotions are overwhelming, I like to take breaks. So maybe setting some boundaries where we have a conversation for 20 minutes and then we take a break and then we can come back to it. Or it might look like, telling the other person, like, I will never intentionally hurt you. It will never be my intention to cause harm to you or to hurt you. Or maybe it might be that, like, I promise to tell you what I need when something comes up, right? Or I promise to approach you when I'm ready, when I feel like something's going on between us, right? So I think these are all important conversations to have around conflict, even before conflict happens. I think to facilitate the conversation and to be able to communicate effectively through the conflict. And also, more honestly speaking, some of our problems might be our own fault. So I know for me that's true. We are not perfect and we are human. And sometimes we've developed negative communication patterns without even knowing. Maybe we didn't have the best role models to teach us how to deal with conflict, or maybe we didn't get to voice our needs growing up. But we can always change these negative patterns of communicating. And there's always ways to do it in a different way. So I want to talk a little bit about that right now. Let's see. There's this video on YouTube called The Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse by the Gottman Institute. And they talk about 4 different ways or negative communication styles that happen in all relationships. This video specifically talks about romantic relationships, but I think they come up in all of our relationships, especially in conflict. And it talks a little bit more in depth about these 4 negative communication patterns. So I'm going to go ahead and play that video for you now.
You're so selfish.
What an idiot.
It's not my fault we're always late.
Forget it.
Criticism, contempt, defensiveness, and stonewalling. Dr. John Gottman calls these negative communication patterns the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse because they'll lead to the end of your relationship. In fact, he can predict this relationship failure with over 90% accuracy if the behavior isn't changed. So, what can you do? Well, at the Gottman Institute, we understand you might not even know you're communicating this way, or you might not know how to control it. But if you practice the following 4 research-based antidotes, there is hope for your future. Criticism attacks the character of the recipient instead of focusing on a specific behavior. The antidote to criticism is to talk about your feelings using I statements, then express a positive need. Contempt is an expression of superiority that comes out as sarcasm, cynicism, name-calling, eye-rolling, sneering, mockery, and hostile humor. Contempt is the greatest predictor of relationship failure and must be eliminated. The antidote to contempt is to treat one another with respect and build a culture of appreciation within the relationship. Defensiveness is self-protection through righteous indignation or playing the victim. Defensiveness never solves the problem, and is really just an underhanded way of blaming your partner. The antidote to defensiveness is to accept responsibility, even if only for part of the conflict. Stonewalling occurs when the listener withdraws from the conversation without resolving anything. It takes time for the negativity created by the first 3 horsemen to result in stonewalling, but when it does, it can become a habit. The antidote to stonewalling is to break for at least 20 minutes, calm down, then return to the conversation. Spare your relationship from certain destruction. Learn more about eliminating the 4 horsemen by visiting our site.
All right. So to go over them a little more, the 4 horsemen basically is, the first one is criticism. So it's really criticizing another person, attacking their character, saying things like, you're so lazy, like you never do this, and things like that. But it's very different from giving feedback. So it's giving feedback on something like, like sometimes I'm really stressed out from work, and when I come home and I see the dishes, like I just really wish someone would really help me, and it stresses me out more. So like if you help me do the dishes more, that would really help me out. As opposed to like, you're so lazy, you never do the dishes, I have to do everything, right? A contempt is just straight out being mean, really disrespectful, mocking the other person, using sarcasm, ridicule, doing eye rolling, scoffing, like, ugh, And I know I've done that too. So if you're feeling like, oh no, like I've done that before, it's okay. I think we all do them. Defensiveness, I think this one's pretty easy. I think we've all done this one. Is typically a response to criticism. So if someone says like, Michelle, you're so lazy, you never do the dishes. I feel like, whoa, where did that come from? And I automatically feel like unjustly someone is attacking me. Then I kind of play the victim, or I come up with excuses like, well, I just got home. Like, what am I supposed to do? Like, I just got home. I didn't have time to do the dishes. Like, why don't you do the dishes? You've been home all day. So that's kind of like putting the blame on someone else. So that's kind of what defensiveness looks like. And stonewalling is usually a response from contempt. So like the eye rolling or the sarcasm or the mean and disrespectful. And it's just withdrawing from the interaction. So shutting down, turning away, acting busy. So it's kind of like just ignoring the problem or ignoring the conversation altogether. Yeah, so hopefully those make sense. So I want to practice some of that now. So what I have here is some quotes of some negative communication styles. And what I want you to do is to guess which of these 4 horsemen it is. So either criticism, contempt, defensiveness, or stonewalling. So you can guess which one it is, and then we'll talk about it. And then afterwards, we'll talk about a different way to communicate that isn't one of the 4 styles. So how to communicate it more effectively. So the first one is you. So it says that I'm saying, you think you're tired? Cry me a river. I have been busy all day and all you do is sit on the couch. And the eye roll. So which one do you think that is out of the 4? So take some time to guess. And so if you guessed contempt, you're right. I think some of it is, what gives it away is using cry me a river, the sarcasm, the eye roll, just like being really negative. And a different way to say that would be saying something like, I've had a really tiring day today and I'm exhausted. Can you help me out with some chores? So we're still communicating the same thing, but it's just coming off as, it's different. It's not really criticizing another person or being sarcastic. It's just communicating what we need, right? And giving some context, saying like, I've had a really long day. So the second one, so this other person tells me, hello, say something. You always walk away when we argue. And I'm quiet, or I walk away. So which one of the 4 is this one? Go ahead and take some time to guess. If you guessed stonewalling, you're right. So what gives this one away is this person just, the other person saying hello, say something. So this person's not engaging. They're not really there. It seems like they've shut down. And then they say, you always walk away when we argue. So I walked away from the conversation. I disengaged completely. I turned away. So maybe a different way to handle this. So usually when this happens is because you're just so overwhelmed or there's so much going on that your body's just like, I'm just going to step away from this because it's too much. A different way to do that, because that's usually not productive, is to say something like, all right, I'm feeling too angry to talk about this. Can we take a break for 20 minutes and then we can come back? So that takes some time maybe for me to cool off, because maybe I'm going to say something mean or something disrespectful, or maybe I'm just not present because I'm just so overwhelmed or I feel really triggered that I need to take a break. So usually a 20-minute break can suffice or can help with that. All right, and our third one is I'm saying, this house is a mess. You are so lazy. So which one of the 4 negative communication styles would this be? Go ahead and take a guess. If you guessed criticism, you're right. So what gives this one away is saying, you are so lazy. So I'm making a criticism about the other person. I'm attacking who they are, their character, and I'm not giving any context. I'm just like going in on them. So a different way that I could say this would be something like, I've had a really tough day and I really need your help tidying around the house. So I'm not criticizing the person or attacking the other person. I'm just saying what I need and giving some context about why I need what I need. So I'm saying I've had a really tough day, so I don't have the mental capacity to just do all of these things. and I just need your help tidying around the house, right? And our last one. So the other person says to me, did you vacuum the floors today? And I say, why are you looking at me? I'm not the only person who lives here. So which one of the four would that be? Go ahead and take a guess. If you guess defensiveness, you're right. And what gives it away in this one is kind of automatically going into like victim mode and blaming someone else. So I said, I'm not the only person who lives here. It's kind of saying like, why are you expecting this of me? And almost like it sounds like anger is coming out. So a different way to say that I could say it, would just be to be honest. And I would say, oops, I forgot. I had a busy day today and I forgot to tell you I couldn't do it. I couldn't vacuum the floors. I'll do it right now, or I'll ask someone to help me, right? So this person just asked me, did you vacuum the floors today? And I could just say, you know what, I forgot. I had a really busy day and I couldn't tell you that I couldn't do it today, but I'll do it now, or I'm gonna ask someone else to help me out, right? So hopefully this is a little bit of an example about how to change maybe the way that we communicate, and maybe some other ways that we could still say what we need to say while being direct, giving some context, and being kind, I think. So some last minute tips is to just express how you feel or an emotion. I think that ties it back to like what's going on with you. Speaking in I statements and avoiding you never or you always. This helps especially with if the criticizing or attacking. So speaking in I statements usually allows for like, no one can argue with me about what I'm feeling or what I experience, because that's true for me, right? And I think that helps the other person get more context about what's going on your side. I also think it's really important to be specific, break it down exactly to what happened, how you're feeling, and what's going on with you now. I think that helps understand for people who are more context or maybe analyzers. It helps give more continuity about how we ended up here. So what happened before that, right? And being specific helps go down into the nitty gritty and fix some of those underlying issues that maybe have been happening for a while, and for us to understand the other person, or for us to feel understood. And I think something really helpful is just at the end of it all to just state a positive action to resolve the situation that results in the needs being met. So positive action means focusing on something that can be done, not something like just stop being done. So it doesn't mean just stop being so ungrateful. It means like maybe a positive action could just be saying like, oh, I'd like for you to tell me that you appreciate me sometimes. Or I'd like for you to show me actions or do things like taking out the trash every once in a while, or telling me that you really care about me. That helps me feel better, right? And usually those things really help give the other person an idea of what needs to happen next in order for us to resolve this conflict. And it also helps us feel like our needs are going to be met, or what we want from this is going to help us. And the last thing I think that's really helpful, at least for me, this is what my therapist always tells me, is just to be kind, be direct, and be clear. So in all conversations, especially in conflict, it's important to be kind, to be respectful of the other person, to be gentle, to be really direct. So say what you mean and mean what you say. Don't be around the bush about things that you want to communicate. Just be really direct. And be clear. So be really clear about what happened or what's going on with you. And I think if you try to stick to those 3 guidelines, or try to tell yourself that before you're going to have a serious conversation with someone, to just be kind, be direct, and be clear. So thank you so much for tuning into this presentation on healthy relationships and effective communication. Please use this link. We'll link it down below as well, to give us feedback about what was useful in this presentation, or maybe what you'd like to see next time. So we will have another healthy relationships presentation later in the quarter on building meaningful connections. So it'll build on this presentation. This one kind of focuses on ourselves and the way that we like to communicate and how that helps in communicating with others. In the second part, the one on meaningful connection will be on how to continue to build a strong relationship with someone and to make a meaningful relationship with that person or other, like your family, your romantic partner or partners, and your friends. So thank you so much for tuning in. I hope that you continue to watch our other YouTube videos on this channel, and that you watch all of our other presentations in the future. So thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you all are doing well and staying safe. Wishing you all the best, and I hope you all have a great weekend. All right, bye-bye.